Hey everyone, Liam here, and welcome to this match preview and prediction for the match between Jack Draper and Carlos Alcaraz in the fourth round of the 2025 Australian Open. Let's get into it. Before we get into the video, as always, if you enjoyed the content on the channel, please like and subscribe. It really helps us grow the quality shot tennis community. Well, we've got a very good matchup here in the fourth round between two players who, they know each other quite well, to be honest. They played a few times on the ATP Tour, but they've sort of got that excitement when they come and play against each other because we know how big both of them can hit. We know how they can take the match out of their opponent's hands in terms of, serve plus one or just really dominating rallies. But when two of these players come up against each other, it's always good. Obviously, Jack Draper is, a player who you would expect to continue going up the rankings, having seen, obviously, his career pathway so far. He's obviously had those issues with injuries in the past, so hopefully, 2024 was a good season for him, but hopefully 2025 can be an even better season for him, just off the fact that, hopefully he stays injury-free, but the fact that he has played, three back-to-back-to-back five-set matches at the Australian Open doesn't really help anyone coming into the fourth round. Even if you are, in your early 20s, very young, very, energetic, it still isn't really what you're looking to achieve. It's not one of those records that you want on your stat pad. But nonetheless, he is in the fourth round. He did play, a very good match against Vukic. Obviously, there was a bit of, I think that match against Vukic was a match where both players just looked throughout the match that both of them were just going to win it in their heads. They just thought that, I'm playing good, I'm going to win it. And then sometimes the opponent would just take it out of their hands. They would hit winners out of nowhere. They would serve incredibly well. And I think it was just one of those matches where whoever's just going to continue to be consistent and, in those big points, just continue to be as free and as energetic and as, willing to take the risk on is going to win, and that was Draper in the end. It's going to be a bit different coming in against Carlos Alcaraz. He's not going to, he's not going to have that much freedom against someone who, is a four-time Grand Slam champion, who, has beaten him twice before technically, but we'll get to the head-to-head later. And realistically is looking to win the title here compared to, playing against Vukic, who, is not nowhere near to be winning the title here. Really a fairy tale story of, getting this far in a Grand Slam, having the Australian crowd behind you, so that helped him, play as well as he did. But the fact is, Draper should be winning those matches if he wants to be. If he's looking to get to even, 90% of Carlos's level, he should be winning those matches in 3 or 4 sets against the likes of Vukic. So realistically, that just tells you the difference between both players. Alcaraz, on the other hand, has been cruising through all of his matches here in Australia so far. Obviously, against Borges, it was a 4-set win instead of a 3-set win, but nonetheless, Borges obviously is a very tricky opponent, so you can't really take too much away from the way that, Carlos played in that. And I think, realistically, he said it himself, the less time I spend on court in the first week of a slam, the better it is. And it's going to be a very big thing coming into this fourth round match. Alcaraz has managed to play his matches, go to bed early, recover as well as he could have recovered, do all of his training properly, whilst, Jack Draper's matches are basically all finished at like midnight, 1 in the morning, nearly 2 in the morning by the time he's done with media, stuff like that. He's going to bed probably at 3, 4 a.m., needs to get back onto court the next day for practice, so there is those little aspects here and there. It's going to be a bit of a difference in terms of their physical fitness coming into this one. If we look at the head-to-head between both players, it is 2-1. They met, obviously, the first 2 times that they met, Alcaraz won in Basel. It was a very, very tight match. It was an indoor hardcourt match, one of Alcaraz's first seasons, playing in the indoor hardcourt. So he was still getting accustomed to it, but he still won it, came through it in a very, very tough fashion. I suggest you go watch the match highlights for that one if you have the time. And then obviously they played, I believe it was Indian Wells, either in 2024 or 2023, I can't remember. And I think Jack had to retire in the second set due to injury. So that's comes back to, hoping that Jack this year is able to just have a injury-free and great season. And then the third match that they played was last year at Queen's, and it was a match on grass where Alcaraz lost. I know, shocking stuff, the 2-time defending Wimbledon champion losing on grass, not only to Jack Draper, and then Draper did it in good fashion. I believe it was straight sets win, but just coming off the back of winning Roland Garros, switching straight up to the grass, never very easy. So it wasn't really a win. It wasn't really a loss for Carlos that I was like, oh my God, this is really going to hurt his chances going into Wimbledon. As we saw, he just progressed and improved further going into Wimbledon, having a little bit more time to get his reps in on the grass. So coming into this one, I think if it was, if Jack had steamed through, his three opponents in the first three rounds in 3 or 4 sets, had a little bit more energy in the tank, I probably would, be giving this matchup a little bit more hype. I do think Carlos is going to come through this one quite stably. I think it's going to be a 4-set win for Carlos, just because of the fact that, he has played well here in Melbourne. He's very determined. He knows what he has to do. Draper is sort of playing catch-up mode in this tournament so far. 3 matches at 5 sets against opponents, Navoni, Kokkinakis, and then obviously Vukic. These are opponents that realistically Carlos would have beaten in 3 sets, all of them. So I think the level is just a bit different, and also the energy reserves in the tank are also a little bit different for both players. So realistically, I think Carlos comes into this one, gets himself into the quarterfinals, and does it in 4 sets. I wouldn't say it's a straight sets victory for Carlos, just because of the fact that their 3 matches that they've played have been very very competitive from both players. And I think realistically Jack can take a set off of Carlos if he gets those 6-5, 6-6 mid tie break, a few big serves here from Jack to just take the ball out of Carlos's racket, or some good returns. And obviously we have to remember that Jack is a lefty, so it's always a little bit tougher for a righty to deal with that. So I definitely think he can take a set off here. Potentially, you could take 2 sets off him here, but I still think nonetheless that Carlos Alcaraz wins this match, whether it's in 4 or 5 sets.